Like many of you, I was initially reluctant to get into House of the Dragon when it first came out. Game of Thrones' disastrous decline in its later seasons left a taste so sour in my mouth that I had pretty much sworn off the world of Ice and Fire. Even after seeing the glowing reviews of its first spin-off show, I remained sceptical, and I decided to wait until this year to finally give it a go. I very tentatively started season 1 last month, and by the end of the first episode, I was immediately hooked. The writing in this show was up there with the best of Game of Thrones' earlier seasons, full of plot and intrigue, with some of the best character acting I'd seen on TV in over a decade. I was so excited by the first few episodes that I binged the whole thing in less than a week. Watching the show became my sole focus, to the unfortunate detriment of my work and sleep schedule. But honestly, I felt, and still feel, that it was more than worth it. The show stirred something in me. It made me excited about grand-scale fiction again, and got me reinvested in a world I thought I'd lost forever. It's funny what great art can do for the soul. Despite the abuse of my downtime, after season 1, I felt more inspired than I had in a long time. Soon I was waiting on the weekly episodes just like the rest of you. Season 2 started off brilliantly and then slowed, especially compared to the rapid plot development of season 1, but I remained committed to the story and I was delighted at the quality of the production. I enjoyed every episode as they came out and always eagerly awaited the next, but looking back now, with the benefit of hindsight, I think my enthusiasm may have blinded me to a number of red flags that had slowly been revealing themselves in the background. Around about episode 5 or 6, I do remember starting to wonder what the writer's plan was for some of the main characters, namely Alicent and Rhaenyra. Their joint passion for the War of Succession had seemed to fizzle out before the battles themselves had really begun, and both characters seemed to be taking a back seat in their decision making, uncharacteristically forgoing their own agency in favour of their council's demands and scheming. In the second half of the season, I noticed that both women seemed powerless, confused, and reluctant to move forward. I assumed it was all part of the story. After all, season 1 had set Alicent up as a brilliant and often ruthless political manoeuvrer, the true heir to her father the Hand, and Rhaenyra was always portrayed as fiery, proud, and relentless in defence of her claim. Surely their quieter, more restrained depictions must be setting one or both of them up for a major act of unpredictability or an inhumane brutality later on in the season, right? Right? Yeah. No. The scene between them in the last episode of the season completely shattered that hope, and honestly, it kind of spun my opinion around on the show as a whole. In a matter of moments, I realised that I'd been giving season 2 far too much credit. I had ignored the signs and had actually been complicit in my own deception. As I watched their final scene, unsure at first whether it was a dream sequence or not, other things from earlier in the season came back to me, and by the end of it I realised the truth and the root of the problem. The writers had clearly made a decision to abandon these characters' core motivations. This is what happens in the climactic scene of season 2. Alicent randomly appears in Dragonstone, the enemy fortress, in the middle of the night. Rhaenyra speaks to her. Alicent confesses that she has been wrong about everything she believed in and portrays herself as an unwilling and unwitting participant in the whole season's plot. She admits jealousy and admiration for Rhaenyra, her enemy, who she thinks is wonderful. She blames the men in her life for her decision to go to war and says she wants to relinquish all responsibility and flee the country with her daughter. In order to facilitate this, she is explicitly willing to sacrifice her son King Aegon and, presumably, her other son the Prince Regent, as well as most of the rest of her family, all of her high-ranking supporters and all the bannermen who have declared their loyalty to her. This is abominable. But the eerie thing is, the show doesn't seem to realise it. Watching the scene, you get the impression that these are two noble women who are prepared to sacrifice everything dearest to them for the promise of peace at any cost. But it's just not true. It's not true to their character, it's definitely not true to their established motivation, and it's not true to the story that has already been shown to us over the last 2 seasons. It's a complete turnaround in Alicent's character especially, and the only setup for it was her dismissal from the council by Aemond, her walk and swim in the woods, and her conversation with Helena about getting her to a safer place. From season 1, we know that Alicent is fiercely protective of her children. We know she is a capable and intelligent political force, and we know that she willingly started this war in order to secure and protect her line. Why does she want to hippie out and abandon her family to death, torment and ruin? It makes absolutely zero sense on her part. And why is Rhaenyra willing to listen? Alicent's actions have not only cheated her out of her rightful throne, but the war has also directly resulted in the death of her son Lucerys. And why is Alicent not more upset about the brutal murder of her innocent grandson Jaehaerys? Why is she first fawning over Rhaenyra, and then, even more astoundingly, why is she asking Rhaenyra to run away with her? Like, what the hell? These two women have more cause to hate each other than any other characters we've been introduced to in the story. They've betrayed each other's friendships, killed each other's children and grandchildren, and razed and devastated the homes of each other's supporters. But they want to run away together and get away from all the war. No. This is unacceptable. As sad as it is to say, these are simply not the characters we got invested in season 1. The actresses play their part remarkably and they do a brilliant job of selling such a terrible scene, but there's nothing that can be done to develop the characters now. The underlying structure of the characters has been dismantled on screen, and I really don't think it's something to be able to come back from. Now, it may seem like an extreme reaction on my end, as the scene itself doesn't necessarily stand out to the casual viewer the way it does for me as a writer. But think about the next season going forward. What are they going to do with Rhaenyra and Alicent? I might be overly cynical, but given some of the other red flags present in this season compared to the first, I suspect that modern propaganda has managed to find its way into this show as it has so many others in recent years. It seems to me that the writers intend to transform our powerful, flawed and compelling female leads into a couple of peace-loving unfortunates, swept along in a war that they don't want, don't understand and can't control, while still being noble, strong and beloved by all. In an effort to lionise the female heroes, they would strip them of their agency and nuance and reduce them to stock feminist fantasy figures, the same way they tried to portray Daenerys Targaryen before they realised the story didn't work without her heel turn. Again, this might be an overreaction on my part, and it may be that they will back off from this tactic for season 3 if the feedback from this finale is strong enough. But I still don't see how they can get these characters back after they've just had them completely betray themselves on screen and presented it as a good thing. I think this event has broken the two main characters and may in fact slowly break the show in the aftermath. What do you think? Will this conversation be one we look back to as a marker signalling the start of the show's decline? Or am I overreacting to a bit of sloppy story construction that can easily be patched over in the upcoming seasons? I had originally planned a different video for this week, but after watching this episode, I just couldn't get the idea out of my head that they've already broken the back of what could have been a brilliant show and a redemption for the world of Westeros on TV. It's something that's really gotten to me, considering what a great impact the first season had on my hopes for well-crafted entertainment. As many of you know, that's something I feel is in critically low supply at the moment. What else did I miss from earlier in the season? Did any of you see this coming before I did? Let me know in the comments below and let me know if you still have hope for the show going forward. Anyway folks, that brings us to the end of this slightly sadder episode of Vivifier. Thanks very much for listening. Hopefully the next episodes can be a little bit more lighthearted. Thanks again. I'll see you all soon.